My collar blinked red, system reminder that I was an Omega. And my own reminder that no one was supposed to know. The office around me hummed with artificial calm, glass corridors stretching, like arteries, neon veins pulsing outside against the gray dawn. People here pretended efficiency was holiness, that every click and gesture served the greater algorithm. I pretended too. A quiet beta programmer, security tester, blending into beige cubicles like a shadow that forgot to cast itself. In reality, the only thing beige about me was the fake entry in the corporate database that read gender rank, beta. I leaned back in my chair, eyes on the wall of monitors. Streams of code scrolled like liturgy. Someone else had written the system, my job was to break it. I cracked a grin. You call this encryption? I've seen sturdier locks on vending machines. A quick tap here, a bypass there, and the firewall coughed up access like it wanted me to have it. I muttered to the empty room. Congratulations, Helix Corp. You've invented the cyber equivalent of wet cardboard. My reflection in the glass stared back. Messy hair, pale contacts muting. The hazel spark in my eyes, collar hidden under a layered hoodie. To anyone else, I looked unremarkable. That was the point. Omegas weren't allowed to look like predators. The collar pulsed again. Red. Always red. Like it was trying to shame me into obedience. The breach alarm didn't come from me. That was the surprise. One moment I was ridiculing their fragile perimeter, the next, a ripple of panic rolled across the network. Unauthorized data transfer. A leak. And somehow, impossibly, my ID flagged first. Of course, I muttered. Fingers already dancing to mask my trace. Blame the security tester. Original. My console pinged with an incoming message. Compliance team requests your presence for questioning. Translation. Men in suits waiting to escort me to a sterile room with cameras angled. Just so, where my collar's color might shift from red to something less survivable. I shut the monitor off mid-ping. Then I stood, smoothed down the jacket that never quite fit, and walked out. Not toward compliance. Toward the elevator. If anyone noticed, they didn't stop me. I moved like routine, and routine is invisible. By the time I stepped into the street, the city had swallowed me whole. Neon ads flared on panels 3 stories high. Rain slicked the pavement into mirrors. My reflection stared back. Distorted by the water. Hood up, jaw set. A ghost moving fast. Then I froze. Above the avenue, a corporate broadcast cut across every surface. Helix holographs burned bright, red, urgent. The words blinked in unison, wanted, corporate fugitive. And my face stared back. Not the beta disguise. Not the neat employee photo. The real me, with sharp eyes and an expression halfway between defiance and laughter. Someone, somewhere, had peeled the mask away. Crowds turned their heads. People gasped, pointed, whispered. I pulled the hood lower and forced myself not to run. Running attracts wolves. Still, my pulse kicked like it wanted out. An alley swallowed me 2 blocks later. I pressed against the wall, rain dripping down the collar's edge. The glow painted my neck red, a beacon I couldn't switch off. Framed on a Monday morning, I whispered to the storm. Guess someone decided I was too interesting to keep alive. Footsteps echoed nearby. Corporate security sweeping the streets already. Too fast. Too organized. This wasn't random. Someone wanted me erased. Fine. They'd underestimated the part where I'm good at disappearing. I slipped deeper into shadow, rain muting my steps. My chest buzzed with a cocktail of fear and adrenaline. But, under it all, a strange exhilaration. If the system wanted me gone, then breaking it wasn't just a game anymore. It was survival. I didn't hear the voice until later. Not on the street, not in the rain, but in the quiet between heartbeats. A deep baritone carried through the static of a hijacked frequency, cold and absolute. Find him, deliver him, at any cost. I didn't know his name yet. I only knew the tone, steady as steel, patient as a predator. A hunter had just been set on my trail. And suddenly, the game wasn't one-sided anymore. If you want to know who's been sent to kill you, hack their cameras. Helix had plenty. Military hangars, training floors, sterile conference rooms. I slipped through the feeds like smoke until I found him. Tall, broad-shouldered. A face built out of sharp angles and colder eyes. Kael, my hunter. He stood in the middle of a hangar that gleamed with steel and discipline. The kind of place where men barked orders and machines obeyed without question. He didn't bark. He didn't need to. His silence carried farther than any shout. I watched from a dozen different lenses as some corporate officer slid a file across the table to him. My file. The image hovering above the metal surface made my stomach knot even as I smirked. My face, reduced to pixels again. My name stripped to a headline, Jasper Rowe. Technician. Beta. Weak. Non-threatening. That lie had saved my life for years. The officer's voice, distorted but clear through the feed. Target is untrained. Submissive. Easy. Kael's mouth actually twitched. Half a laugh. The first glimpse of humanity in that steel-cut mask. This will be a walk. I should have been insulted. Instead, I grinned into the dark of my safe house, whispering to myself, good. Underestimate me. The airport smelled like nerves and coffee. Crowds surged in neon tides, luggage wheels rattling like distant thunder. It was the perfect place to disappear. Too many eyes, too many distractions, too many people who looked almost like me. I changed before stepping into the current, lenses tinting my eyes dull gray, mimic chips softening the angles of my face, posture adjusted to beta slouch. If you want to hide, hide in plain sight. But then I felt it. A gaze that didn't skim, didn't dismiss. It caught like a hook. I didn't need to see him to know it was him. Kael. When I finally spotted him across the terminal, my pulse betrayed me, hammering sharp against my collar. He moved through the crowd like it was water, and he was built to cut through it. Focused. Controlled. Predatory. For 1 second too long, our eyes met. He surged forward. I pivoted. Slipping between a family of tourists, swapping boarding passes, with the man beside me who never even noticed the lightness of his hand. The gate flashed green for me, red for him. His curse drowned in the terminal noise as I vanished into the stream of bodies. Behind me, Kael pressed forward. Closer. Always closer. My reflection flickered in the glass walls, hood up, stranger's passport in hand, a grin twitching at the corner of my mouth. Then, contact. His fingers brushed fabric. But not mine. I'd positioned the decoy perfectly, same height, same jacket, same pace. A poor soul plucked from the flood without knowing why. Kael's grip locked on, but when the man turned, confusion carved across his face. I was already gone. By the time Kael sat down in the waiting area, the chase had burned a new rhythm into both of us. I watched from a mirrored panel overhead, invisible, savoring the way his jaw tightened. Not frustration, calculation. He wasn't used to failing. That made two of us who weren't what the system thought we were. When he finally noticed the small white card tucked into the armrest of the chair, I almost laughed out loud. I'd left it minutes before, handwriting neat and deliberate. You caught air. He stared at it for a long moment, expression unreadable. Then he pocketed it like evidence, though we both knew it was a taunt. I slipped out of the terminal before the announcements even finished boarding the next flight. The game was set. He thought he was chasing prey. I knew I'd chosen my hunter. The first rule of disappearing: never look like yourself twice in the same week. I stood in front of the cracked mirror of my temporary apartment, one room above a noodle shop, walls sweating from steam, the hum of neon bleeding through the blinds. A stranger stared back at me, hair cropped shorter, hazel eyes dulled to industrial gray. With lenses, cheekbones softened by mimic coating that fuzzed the lines of my jaw. The system said unremarkable. Perfect. I adjusted the collar so its faint red pulse hid beneath the hoodie's folds. Every blink of that light was a reminder. No matter what face I wore, the system would always whisper Omega. The thought should have burned. Instead, it made me grin. I liked the game. The chase, the trickery, the simple fact that someone out there, a man with soldier's eyes, believed he could catch me. Later that night, while shadows knotted themselves in the alleys outside, I slipped into Kael's implant feed. His voice had been a constant murmur in the data stream. Low, steady recording notes like he was still in uniform. Subject cited. Possible disguise, terminal misdirection, must refine search grid. I laughed quietly, fingers flicking over my console. Military precision, even when talking to himself. Cute. So I threaded my voice into his silence. Evening, soldier. There was a sharp intake of breath on his end. He froze mid-sentence. Who? You're sloppy with firewalls, I said, leaning back in my chair. And predictable. Honestly, I guessed your password on the first try. 6 digits, really? His tone went granite. I will catch you. I smirked. Doubt it. You're good at hunting, Kael, but you're hunting a ghost. A long pause, his breathing audible in the feed. The silence between us tasted like tension stretched thin. Then he cut the connection. Hard. But too late. I'd already mirrored the channel. From now on, he couldn't record a thought without me eavesdropping. The city's nightlife pulsed bright and ugly, music throbbed through club walls, neon dripping off bodies like sweat. Perfect stage for Act 2. I planted my decoy in the crowd. An Omega wearing my face, digital mask humming over cheap implants. His smile was too wide, his movements too rehearsed. He didn't need to be me for long, just enough to bait the trap. From my perch above the floor, tucked into the metal lattice of a catwalk, I watched Kael cut through the crowd. Black coat, storm-colored eyes, every movement precise. He was a blade moving through chaos, ignoring the music, the lights, the distraction. His gaze locked on the decoy immediately. Good. He was learning the rhythm of me. He moved faster now, parting the dancers like they were nothing. The decoy played his role, slipping just out of reach, drawing Kael deeper into the throng. Then Kael lunged, grip closing around an arm. The crowd recoiled. The decoy flinched. For a heartbeat, Kael believed he had me. I let myself smile in the shadows. The mimicry shimmered under his touch, distortion crawling over the decoy's skin until the illusion broke. Kael's hand clutched an Omega stranger, trembling and terrified, eyes wide in confusion. The music didn't stop, but the game did. For him, anyway. For me? I leaned against the railing above, laughter caught in my throat. My collar blinked faint red against the dark as I whispered into his feed, voice wrapping around his frustration. You caught someone. But not me. His head snapped upward, scanning the rafters. Too late. I was already slipping back into the night. By the time I returned to the alley outside, the rain had started again, drumming steady against pavement. The kind of rain that washed footprints clean. I let the connection hum one last time, savoring the silence on his end. Then I gave him what he needed, and what he hated. You didn't catch me, Kael, I murmured, smiling as the storm swallowed my words. You caught your pride. And pride doesn't hold nearly as well as chains. Rain has a way of making a city feel alive, like every surface is breathing, every gutter a vein, every rooftop a beating heart. That night it felt like the whole city was chasing me. My lungs burned as I scrambled up the last flight of emergency stairs, boots slipping on metal slick with water. Neon pulsed from below, flashing pink and blue against the storm clouds. The collar at my throat blinked its steady red, mocking me with every beat. I burst through the door onto the rooftop, and the storm swallowed me whole. Rain hammered down in sheets so heavy I could barely see the skyline. Thunder cracked overhead, vibrating through my ribs. The city blurred into streaks of light and shadow. Behind me, the door slammed open. Kael. He moved through the downpour like it was nothing, black coat plastered. To his frame, eyes sharper than the lightning tearing across the sky. For once, I didn't have time to taunt. He was too close. Too fast. I sprinted across the rooftop, feet splashing through puddles that reflected neon. My hands caught the slick railing, and for a second, I considered leaping, 30 stories down into the storm. But Kael was already there. His fist caught my hood, yanking me back so hard the world tilted. I slammed against the railing, cold steel biting into my spine. His hand tightened on my collar, pinning me between storm and soldier. End of the game, he said. His voice was steady, even with thunder shattering the sky. I looked up at him, rain running down my face like tears I'd never admit to. He was close enough that I could see the storm mirrored in his eyes, could feel the controlled violence in his grip. For a moment, I almost believed him. Then I laughed. You're serious? I tilted my head, lips twisting into a grin that tasted like rainwater and defiance. The game's only just begun. His jaw clenched, eyes narrowing. He thought he had me. And maybe he did, if the game was about strength. But it wasn't. It never was. I twisted, sudden and sharp, slipping out of the grip that had felt unbreakable. The slick fabric of my soaked jacket betrayed him, sliding under his hand like water itself. His eyes widened for just a fraction of a second. That was enough. I shoved back, laughing even as the storm drowned the sound, and without another thought, I vaulted the railing. The world dropped out from under me. Water roared in my ears, thunder cracked overhead, and gravity itself seemed to hesitate. For an instant, suspended in the downpour, I felt free, freer than I ever had in corridors or alleys or even stolen apartments. If the system wanted me chained, then this moment was proof it hadn't won yet. The storm caught me. The currents of water cascading off the roof swallowed my fall, carrying me down into shadow. I hit the lower ledge hard, rolled, teeth rattling, but I was alive and grinning like a lunatic. Behind me, high above, Kael stood at the railing. A dark figure etched against lightning, coat plastered to his body, jaw set. He didn't shout. Didn't curse. He just watched. I could almost feel the shift in him, even from that distance. Not rage, not frustration, something heavier, something quieter. I slipped back into the maze of rooftops, my laughter carried away by the storm. The city swallowed me again, and the game kept moving. But I knew, even without hearing him, that Kael wasn't thinking about orders anymore. He was thinking about me. And maybe, just maybe for the first time, I wasn't just his prey. Breaking into Kael's implant once had been satisfying. Breaking in again would have been reckless. So instead, I left him something quieter. More analog. The old music player looked harmless enough. Scratched plastic casing and tinny speakers. A relic from a time when people thought music alone could drown out the world. I'd modified it, of course. Threaded it with back doors, filters, and a channel wired straight to me. By the time he found it sitting on his table, I was already waiting. Night hushed around him. His apartment was Spartan. Almost military. Bare walls, a single chair, a weapon disassembled neatly on the counter. He sat with the player in front of him, shoulders tense, like the little machine might bite. He pressed play. My voice spilled into the silence. "You always this tidy, soldier? Or is that just how Helix trains you?" His hand jerked. I could picture it. Gray eyes narrowing, jaw clenching. He didn't answer. I laughed softly through the static. "Relax. If I wanted to fry your implant, I'd have done it. This is just conversation." For a long moment, the only sound was rain tapping against his window. Then his voice, low, clipped, like every word had to pass inspection. "You're taunting me." "Of course," I said. "What else would I be doing at 2 a.m? Sleep is overrated." The dialogue stretched across the room like a wire strung tight. Sometimes silence hummed louder than words. But eventually he gave me more. "You can't run forever." I grinned at the ceiling of my hideout, where wires coiled like snakes. "Forever's a long time. I only need to run longer than you can chase." His breath crackled faintly through the line, steady as a metronome. He was the kind of man who didn't give away irritation, which only made it more fun to poke at him. "Funny thing though," I added, softer. "You keep calling me a fugitive, but you've never asked why I ran." Silence. Heavy. Waiting. I let the truth bleed in around the sarcasm, careful not to give him too much. "You know what the collar does, Kael? It doesn't just track, it reminds. Every blink says, obey. Stay small. Don't breathe too loud. Omegas get told we're delicate, but the truth? We're just convenient. Easier to chain than to trust." I stopped there, letting the words hang. My throat felt tighter than I'd meant it to. On his end, the silence changed. Not sharp, not judging. Just listening. "Sounds like you resent it," he said at last. I barked out a laugh, though it came out rougher than I wanted. "Resentment's free. It's the one thing they haven't taxed yet." That, finally, earned me something unexpected. Through the static, I caught it, barely audible, quick but real. A laugh. Kael. Laughing. I blinked at the console, stunned for half a second before grinning so wide my face hurt. Did the soldier just laugh? "Careful, you'll ruin your reputation." He didn't reply, but the silence wasn't cold anymore. It was different. We lingered there longer than either of us planned, trading barbs that softened into something almost conversational. The line between hunter and hunted blurred, until it felt less like a chase and more like two men stranded in the same storm, filling the quiet with voices because otherwise the silence might eat us whole. I knew better than to trust it. But I also knew better than to waste it. When the player finally clicked into recording mode, his voice dropped, lower, like he was speaking to someone he didn't expect to answer. "You irritate me," Kael said. There was the faintest pause, the sound of a breath he almost held. Then quieter, but stay on the line. I lay back in my chair, heart doing something it shouldn't, and let the rain swallow my grin. For once, I didn't feel like I was running. Corporations love their rooms dark. Dark walls, dark tables, dark decisions. The kind of place where light feels like a trespass. I wasn't in the conference hall when the director changed my label from retrieve to terminate, but I didn't need to be. Networks leak like faucets, if you know which pipes to listen to. The feed flickered across my console, Kael standing rigid at the end of a chrome table, his shoulders squared like a man carved from duty. Across from him, the suits spoke with machine voices. Subject is compromised. One intoned. Upon contact, another said, terminate. Terminate. Such a clean word for murder. I leaned back in my chair, smirking at the collar's steady red blink. Congratulations, soldier, I murmured to the silent room. You've just been promoted from retriever to executioner. Later that night, I slipped into his comm channel again. His voice was there, low and restless, like gravel grinding against steel. He hadn't repeated the order. Not out loud, anyway. I spoke softly into the static. So they've changed the rules. Now you're not just hunting me, you're hunting your conscience. The silence on his end was long. Not clipped, not sharp, just heavy. He could have cut me off. Instead, he stayed. That told me more than words. I tested him 2 days later. An alley near the financial district, drenched in the kind of neon that makes rain look radioactive. I let him find me. Hood low, jacket dripping, collar pulsing faint red like a bullseye. Kael's footsteps echoed before I saw him. He was always steady, never hurried, but the air bent around him like even the storm respected his pace. When our eyes met, I didn't run. I just waited, leaning against the wall, smirk tugging at my lips. His hand went to his weapon. The order hung invisible between us. One move and I'd be another statistic. A ghost filed under terminated. Do it, I said, tilting my head. Be their good soldier. For a second, the only sound was rain bouncing off metal and stone. His eyes locked on me, gray and unflinching. Then, hesitation. Just the tiniest flicker, but I caught it. You should, I pressed. My voice was calm, too calm for the pulse pounding in my throat. But you won't. His hand clenched. Then loosened. The weapon stayed holstered. Kael exhaled, a sound so small it almost vanished under the storm. Then he said it, rough but certain, get out of here. And just like that, the world shifted. I didn't laugh this time. Didn't smirk. I just let the rain hide the heat rushing through me as I stepped past him, close enough to feel the war burning under his skin. He could have ended me. Instead, he let me go. Back in the shadows, I replayed the moment in my head, over and over. The order had been simple. Terminate. But Kael had disobeyed. Not for me, I told myself. For himself. Because somewhere between the orders and the silence, the soldier had found a crack. And in that crack something else was growing. The abandoned substation had been mined for weeks. Rusted doors, broken monitors, wires like veins crawling across the walls. It was ugly, but it listened to me. I'd rerouted half the city's signals here, a spider's web spun out of neon and static. When Kael stepped too close to the trap, I knew it instantly. His implant hummed at a frequency I'd memorized, like a heartbeat out of tune. One quick injection of code, and his HUD blinked dark. Son of a... His voice cut off as the comms fried. I grinned at the console, watching his signal stagger. Easy there, soldier. Just pressing mute on your inner drill sergeant. A slam echoed through the hall as he pushed open the substation's door. Water dripped from the ceiling in slow, steady beats. I leaned against the console, hood half down, collar blinking faint red in the dark. He stood framed in the doorway, tall, broad, eyes scanning like he could shoot shadows into submission. Without his implant feed, he looked raw, more human. And more dangerous. What did you do? His tone could have frozen steel. Nothing permanent. I tapped my temple, smirking. Just silence the ghost in your head. Trust me, you'll thank me. Don't you ever get tired of the constant follow orders, obey, salute? He took a step closer. You hacked my implant. I liberated it, I corrected. There's a difference. You locked me in here. Technically, I locked us in here. I shrugged. I could have left. But let's be honest. It's more fun this way. The storm outside rattled the substation's broken windows. Inside, the air was thick with static and tension. He kept watching me, waiting for weakness, waiting for the rabbit to twitch. I tilted my head, letting the grin spread. You know, I could erase your memory right now. Wipe me clean out of your head. You'd wake up tomorrow thinking you chased a phantom and lost. His eyes narrowed, but he didn't flinch. Do it. I blinked, then chuckled. Oh, that's no fun. What's a game without a rival? You're insane. "And that," I said, stepping close enough for the storm light to paint both of us in the same pale blue, "is what attracts you." He didn't answer. But his silence wasn't denial, not anymore. The minutes stretched. He stood by the wall, disciplined as ever, while I moved between consoles, fingers dancing across cracked keyboards. Every now and then I threw a barb over my shoulder. "You glare like it's a profession. Do soldiers practice breathing at that exact rhythm, or is it just you? You stand like you're auditioning for a recruitment poster." He ignored most of them, jaw tightening just slightly, enough to keep me entertained. But every so often, when he thought I wasn't looking, his eyes lingered. Not with the cold of a predator, but with something uncertain, curious. I caught him once, and instead of mocking him, I just held his gaze. For a heartbeat, neither of us moved. Rainwater dripped into the silence, loud as thunder. By the time I powered down the last monitor, the air between us had shifted. No longer hunter and hunted. Something messier, more fragile. I brushed past him on my way to the door, close enough for my shoulder to graze his arm. He tensed, but didn't pull away. "Ceasefire," I said lightly. "Until morning." He didn't reply. He didn't need to. His eyes told me what I'd already guessed. He wasn't looking at me like an enemy anymore. And that was more dangerous than any order Helix could give him. The storm outside had finally broken, leaving only the soft hiss of rain dripping through cracks in the ceiling. The substation smelled of rust and ozone, but inside, with the lights dimmed to a faint amber glow, it felt almost safe. Kael sat across from me, his back to the wall, every inch of him still soldier straight even in exhaustion. His implant was still quiet under my lock, so for once he wasn't listening to orders or updates. Only me. And maybe that's why I said it. "I'm not hiding from you," I murmured, fiddling with the edge of my sleeve. My voice sounded too fragile in the stillness, so I pushed harder, letting sarcasm coat the truth. "If I wanted to disappear from you, I'd be halfway to another city already." His gray eyes sharpened, but he didn't interrupt. He just waited, like he always did. Patient in a way that made my chest tighten. "I'm hiding," I said at last, softer now, from who I was supposed to become. From the role stamped on my birth papers, from collars and control and the life of someone who isn't allowed to choose. I tapped the red light pulsing faintly at my throat. "This isn't just metal, it's a leash. And I've spent my whole life pretending it wasn't choking me." The words left me raw, stripped bare. I hated the silence that followed, hated how exposed I felt in front of him. The one man sent to break me. But Kael didn't sneer. He didn't call me weak. His voice was low, steady. "I don't see you as a target anymore." Something in me flinched. Not at the words, but at how much I wanted to believe them. We sat there, the hum of broken machines around us, neither moving. My fingers drummed nervously on my thigh, a useless attempt to hide the way my pulse raced. "You don't get it," I whispered, though I wasn't sure if I was arguing with him or with myself. "I was born tagged as an Omega, and that means—" "Never mind. My choices, my life, my body, always someone else's property." His jaw tightened, the muscle ticking once. "I get enough. I've seen chains before, Jasper. Different kinds, but they cut the same." For the first time since I'd met him, I believed he wasn't just playing soldier. He knew. The distance between us shrank without either of us standing. Maybe it was just the storm-softened light. Maybe it was the way exhaustion stripped both our defenses. My hand brushed the console beside me, and I realized I was shaking. Not from fear, but from the terrifying urge to close the gap. "Say it," I demanded suddenly, my voice breaking sharper than I meant. "Say you don't want to catch me anymore." His eyes burned into mine. He didn't move closer, didn't grab, didn't command. He just said it like a vow. "I don't." The tension snapped like a wire. My laugh was unsteady, more of a release than amusement. I leaned forward, closing the space between us, until I could feel the heat of his breath. "You didn't win," I whispered, my forehead brushing his. "You never could. I chose this. I chose to stop running. I chose to let you catch me." His reply was quiet, but it went straight through me. "Then maybe I'm the one who's caught." The kiss wasn't a blaze. It wasn't rough or desperate. It was hesitant, careful, as if either of us could still change our mind. But when his lips finally met mine, it was grounding, anchoring me in a way nothing else ever had. I didn't feel trapped. I felt free. The world outside could still burn. Orders, collars, corporations. They could demand and threaten and dictate. But here, in this hollowed-out ruin with the storm whispering through broken glass, I had chosen him. And in his steady grip, I felt chosen back. Later, lying against him with the faint hum of his heartbeat in my ear, I let my guard slip further than I ever had. My eyes drifted shut, heavy with a peace I hadn't known I could feel. Just before sleep claimed me, I murmured against his chest. "You didn't beat me, Kael. I surrendered because I wanted to." His hand settled at the back of my neck. Firm and protective. For once, he didn't argue. And I knew, when he finally let himself exhale, when I felt the tight line of his body ease, that this was the first night he allowed himself to rest too. Morning always feels louder when you've shared the night with someone. The hum of the city through cracked glass, the steady thrum of neon, even the drip of rainwater from the roof, it all pressed in sharper when I woke and realized Kael was still sleeping. And I wasn't. I'd slipped out before dawn. Part instinct, part habit, part cowardice. Call it what you like. But the truth was simple. The moment we stopped running and started being, I knew the clock had reset. The corporation wouldn't stop because we'd shared a kiss in the dark. So I walked away. By noon, my face was still glowing across city billboards. Wanted, in letters taller than I was. My collar blinked faint red beneath my jacket as if laughing at me. Still owned. Still hunted. I almost didn't go back. Almost. That evening, I stood outside his apartment door, clutching two things in my hands. A battered flash drive and a cup of cheap coffee that steamed into the cool air. My reflection stared back at me from the polished steel of the door panel. Dark hair mussed, collar dimmed but never off, eyes too tired to be clever. For a second, I nearly turned away. Then I knocked. Inside, I heard movement. Heavy, slow, hesitant. Like a man bracing for bad news. The door opened, and there he was, Kael, barefooted, shirt creased, eyes rimmed. With a sleeplessness that had nothing to do with war and everything to do with me. For once, I didn't smirk. I just held up the offerings in my hands. Peace offering. One caffeinated beverage and one very dangerous piece of hardware. His gaze flicked to the flash drive. "What's on it?" "Everything they're afraid you'll know," I said softly. "And maybe proof I'm not the villain they painted me as." "And the coffee?" "That's just coffee. Thought you'd need it." The corner of his mouth twitched, almost, a smile. He stepped aside, and I walked in. The place smelled like him. Clean, sharp, with a trace of gun oil and rain-damp fabric. My boots left faint tracks on the floor, and I felt the strangeness of standing in his world instead of the shadows between ours. I set the cup and flash drive on his table. He didn't move to grab either. Just looked at me, steady and unreadable. "Why come back?" he asked finally. I lifted my chin, meeting his gaze. "Because running isn't winning. And hiding isn't living. And because..." I hesitated, then let it out. "You let me choose. That's worth more than escape." Silence stretched between us again, thick, but not suffocating. He leaned back against the counter, crossing his arms. "You know," I said, forcing a crooked smile, "now that you know where I am, technically the game's over." His voice was quiet, rough. "So, who won?" I held his stare. My collar pulsed once, faint and stubborn, like it still wanted to answer for me. But my voice came first. "Neither of us," I said. "Or both. Now you know where I am, which means we both lost. Or maybe we both won." The weight of the day softened in the silence that followed. The rain outside eased into a whisper against the glass. And for once, I didn't feel the urge to run toward it. Kael pushed off the counter, walked toward me, and for a moment I thought he'd take the flash drive, or the coffee, or both. Instead, he just stopped close enough for his presence to swallow the room. "Stay," he said simply. It wasn't an order. It wasn't a command. It was the kind of word that sounded like choice. I exhaled, slow, steady, letting the last of the tension bleed out. For the first time in years I wasn't calculating escape routes. I wasn't planning the next mask, the next face, the next trick. I was just here. With him. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough.